Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to the 2017 Malaysian Formula 1 Grand Prix Live Commentary stream. As always with these live commentary streams, please be aware that I will not be streaming actual video or audio content of the actual Formula 1 session in progress. Therefore, I do recommend that you position yourself strategically relative to your chosen medium of race consumption and the sound of my voice, so that you too can appreciate the commentary as well as participate here in the live chat. Cameron, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your part of the world. It is just before 3 a.m. here on the east coast of the United States. I've got my 20-ounce can of Red Bull ready to go for this one. It's bad. And yes, speaking of bad, Kimi apparently has a turbocharger failure. That means one Ferrari at the front of the grid is in trouble, and the other Ferrari at the back of the grid is in trouble by virtue of being at the back of the grid. So it appears that Lewis Hamilton should be running away with this race before it has even started. However, we saw what happened 2 weeks ago in Singapore at the start. This is a place where you can have a first corner incident, especially when Max Verstappen is now effectively in P2. We'll see what happens here. Valtteri Bottas in P5. The grid, as it stands at the moment, apparently things are still very much in flux. Pole position for Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes have been on the back foot all weekend, and then yesterday Lewis Hamilton apparently figured something out, and that Mercedes was put on pole. P2 for the moment is Kimi Räikkönen, although we are getting some intelligence reports saying that he has a turbocharger failure. P3 for Max Verstappen in the second Red Bull, and P4 for Daniel Ricciardo in the first Red Bull. P5, Valtteri Bottas in the second Mercedes. P6 for Esteban Ocon in the Force India, and P7 for Stoffel van Dorn. The McLarens are actually not doing too badly here in Malaysia. P8 for Nico Hülkenberg in the Renault, P9 for Sergio Perez in the second Force India, and P10 for Fernando Alonso. Both McLarens into Q3 yesterday. Really, really cool to see that. P11 for Felipe Massa in the Williams, P12 for Jolyon Palmer. I thought that Jolyon Palmer was supposed to be in the unemployment office this weekend. Not quite sure why we're still seeing him, but there he is. He had a very stupid accident on Friday with Max Verstappen. He said it was Verstappen's fault. Verstappen said it was Palmer's fault. Honestly, I think it was Palmer's fault because he came from a long way back and managed to hit Verstappen anyway. P13 for Lance Stroll in the second Williams, P14 for Carlos Sainz in the Toro Rosso, and P15, debutant Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso. He replaces Daniel Kvyat. P16 for Romain Grosjean in the Haas, P17 his teammate Kevin Magnussen, P18 Pascal Wehrlein in the first of the Saubers, P19 Marcus Ericsson in the other Sauber, and P20 Sebastian Vettel. Engine change for the German, relegating him to the back of the grid. We have just about 7 minutes remaining before the start of this race. We apparently have a Ferrari crisis. Kimi Räikkönen, all the bodywork still off of the car. Mechanics working frantically around the rear end. Who knows what they're actually trying to do, whether it's legal or not. At this point, I just want to see Kimi take the start, and then we'll see what happens from there. 7 minutes to go before the start of the Malaysian Grand Prix. There are some wet spots on the circuit, and the skies are most decidedly overcast, but it does not look particularly threatening out there. I don't think we're going to be seeing any sort of rain, at least for the foreseeable future, but we'll see how that shakes out as we go through the race. The Malaysian Grand Prix, not one of my favorite races, in all honesty. I think the circuit is a little bit too long and drawn out in order to keep the cars bunched together and make some good overtaking opportunities. The last Malaysian Grand Prix that I remember being exciting to any degree was 2012, with Fernando Alonso fighting with Sergio Perez. Alonso then at Ferrari and Perez then at Sauber. Perez very nearly won the race. Before that, 2009, a rain-shortened race saw half points awarded, and then Jenson Button came out on top in the Brawn. And then before that, 2001, where Michael Schumacher triumphed in the Ferrari after another rain-interrupted session. Speaking of Ferrari, as I speak, with 6 minutes to go before the start of this race, Kimi Räikkönen in car being pushed on high stands into the pit lane. I don't know what is going to happen to the Finn. I don't know if Ferrari are simply trying to start from the pit lane for some unknown reason. However, that puts Max Verstappen into an effective P2. Good morning to everybody who is here, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is in your particular locale. Well, with Kimi Räikkönen apparently out of the race before it even starts, that means that we have a straight fight into turn one between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen has absolutely nothing to lose into this turn one bottle up, I guess you can call it. Turn one here in Malaysia is particularly prone to there being some sort of an incident. Not usually a big one, but enough to put some damage on somebody's car, because it is a very tight and progressively tightening right-hand corner leading immediately into turn two, which is just as tight, but it goes in exactly the opposite direction. So if we are going to see any sort of fireworks in this race, it's going to be turn one, lap one, Verstappen and Hamilton. Yeah, that is very interesting. Kunos released the 70th anniversary edition Ferrari pack for Assetto Corsa 2 weeks ago, and yeah, Ferrari has an absolutely terrible race 2 weeks ago, and another terrible race today already, even though the race has not started yet. One wonders. Obviously, there is no correlation, it is mere coincidence. However, is it possible that all of us now in Assetto Corsa are putting in more consistent performances than the actual Scuderia Ferrari Formula 1 team? I think it's more than possible. I think it's real at this point. Yes, Max will still start from the P3 grid slot. However, he will have no immediate opposition in the form of Kimi Räikkönen because, well, Kimi's not going to be on the grid. Will that be enough, though, for Verstappen to get some sort of a big toe on Lewis Hamilton down the relatively long run down to turn one? Potentially, but we do know that Mercedes are burning a little bit more oil than fuel at this particular stage of the World Championship, so we'll see what that horsepower differential is heading down into turn one. I would like to see Verstappen challenge Hamilton just to breathe some life into what is probably going to be an extremely boring race at this point. Consolation prize is going to be that Sebastian Vettel is at the back, and unless he also has the same sort of turbocharger gremlin that has claimed Kimi Räikkönen, I think we could see a storming drive from Sebastian Vettel. We've got about 30 seconds before the start of the formation lap. The two red lights are on at the front of the grid. We do have an appreciable amount of smoke issuing from the tailpipe of one of the Toro Rossos. I can't quite determine who that is. Mechanics have vacated the grid. All the tire blankets are off, waiting for the last red light to go out. 3 p.m. local time, green lights are on, and the field roll-off on the formation lap for the last time here in Malaysia. At this point, I can tell all of us that all cars between positions 1 and 17 are running on the red sidewall super soft tires. However, P18, 19, and 20, that's Verline, Ericsson, and Vettel running on the yellow sidewalled soft tires. So, not much variation in tire strategy here for the first stint. Cameron, I definitely agree there. Ferrari quite dominantly won the opening round of this year's championship. Obviously, they were leading the Constructors' Championship, and Vettel was leading the Drivers' Championship. However, it has just all gone away from them. And I can fault no one thing in particular aside from Ferrari's management. They are not the team that they were in the early 2000s. They are not the team that was being run by Ross Brawn. They still have a long way to come. And it's been far too long that we haven't had a Ferrari Drivers' Champion at very least. Look at that. It's 102 points at the front of the Constructors' Championship right now between Mercedes and Ferrari. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, the field have come down the secondary grid here in Malaysia, the first of the two long straights. Carlos Sainz radio, I couldn't quite make it out. However, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming through the final corner now, doing their burnouts, coming up to their respective grid slots. They have the rest of the field in tow. Pretty fast formation lap, I've got to say. However, this final gridding sequence is taking a long time. Hamilton and Verstappen have taken their appropriate grid slots. Max Verstappen still has to start from the P3 grid slot. That may mean advantage to Daniel Ricciardo into turn 1. We will find out. The sole remaining Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel now rounding the final bend to take his P20 grid position. It does not appear that Kimi Räikkönen will be at the end of the pit lane for this start. Vettel now coming into position. The safety car is in position. Charlie Whiting on the button here, waiting for the start sequence. 1 light, 2, 3, 4, 5, pause. Lights out, and we are away. Who has the better start here? Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, or Daniel Ricciardo? Verstappen does not have a good start. He slots in behind his teammate, Daniel Ricciardo. Verstappen looking up the inside. Ricciardo blocks him. Nobody challenges Hamilton into turn 1. Valtteri Bottas, though, getting an absolute blinder of a start. He is up into P2 immediately from P5. Looking down the rest of the field, there did appear to be some contact between a Force India and a Renault. We'll have to see on replay what that is. Daniel Ricciardo retakes Valtteri Bottas, and Bottas does not appear to have an answer for the Australian. The order at the moment is Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, I beg your pardon. That was Max Verstappen taking Valtteri Bottas, so the order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Ricciardo, Van Dorn, Perez, Ocon, Stroll, Hulkenberg, and Massa, your top 10. We have confirmation now that Kimi Räikkönen has abandoned this race. DNS for Kimi Räikkönen. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, is up in the P17 already, and he's about to dispose of Jolyon Palmer, who blocks him quite egregiously. We'll be getting some radio transmissions from the former world champion, undoubtedly. Meanwhile, at the front, the gap now between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen is just about 2 seconds already at this early stage in the race. Just trying to count it visually here. Sebastian Vettel still trying to dispose of Jolyon Palmer here. Again, I'm still wondering why. And we have Nico Hülkenberg off and on there, coming on to start-finish. He's throwing dirt and things all over the circuit. Should be sufficiently offline. Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon duking it out into turns 1 and 2. Looks like Ocon is the winner through there. Vettel still trying to get around the Renaults. He's now moved his way up to Nico Hülkenberg, who is giving him quite a hard time. However, the superior horsepower of that Ferrari engine should help Vettel dispose of the German here into turn 4, and indeed it does. Grosjean radio. Romain Grosjean saying that the Toro Rosso is weaving all over the effing place. He must be talking about Pierre Gasly or Carlos Sainz. I'm going to say he's talking about Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, at the front of the grid, the gap is just under 1 second at this point. Of course, we do not have DRS enabled yet. However, once DRS is enabled, the gap between the Mercedes and the Toro Rosso will just magically grow to about 17.5 seconds, as it normally does. We'll see here. Fastest lap of the race here on lap 2. Actually, Max Verstappen gets it a 1:37.792. He's fastest in Sector 2. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, is fastest in Sector 1. DRS enabled. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, already up to P11. His next target is Fernando Alonso. Will VTEC kick in for the Spaniard? In and out of the pits for Esteban Ocon. He goes on to the soft compound tires with the yellow sidewall. Max Verstappen, to his credit, is hanging there with Lewis Hamilton. The gap now 0.683. The success or failure of this Grand Prix from a show business standpoint is down to Max Verstappen. The interval at this point is 0.418 seconds between Hamilton and Verstappen. Hamilton and Verstappen, meanwhile, are trading fastest lap. Hamilton came across the line and set fastest lap, and it was immediately eclipsed by Verstappen. And coming down here into turn 1, Max Verstappen with a big toe on Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen down the inside into turn 1. Will he make this move stick through turn 2? Indeed he does. Max Verstappen has taken the lead of the Malaysian Grand Prix. Can he hold on to this? This is absolutely extraordinary. Does Red Bull have the pace over Mercedes today? Can Hamilton answer here into turn 3? No, he cannot. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas has taken Daniel Ricciardo for P3. Max Verstappen, fastest lap of the race, a 1:37.062. Lewis Hamilton last time by 1:37.387. Do Mercedes have a problem here? You know, you have to stay with us. You must stay with us. Your good luck here. We need anyone other than a Hamilton victory here. Not because I don't like Lewis Hamilton. I do like Lewis Hamilton, but I want an interesting afternoon. Mercedes have been winning everything this year. I want something to spice up the action. Right now, we have that in the form of Max Verstappen. Hamilton trying to look here at Max Verstappen into turn 1. He is unable to have an answer for the Dutchman. Unbelievable. Max Verstappen fastest of all in Sector 2. Hamilton not setting any purple times on that previous lap. What is going on with that Mercedes? Do they have some sort of hybrid issue? We'll see. Speaking of fastest sector times, Kevin Magnussen all the way down in P9 was purple in Sector 1 on that lap. Replay of the start here. I thought I saw a contact between a Force India and a Renault here in turn 1, and indeed there was. It was a three-way between, looked like Felipe Massa, one of the Force Indias, and one of the Renaults. On board replay of the start with Valtteri Bottas. Not a bad getaway for the Finn. He worked his way all the way up into P2 briefly before Max Verstappen overtook him. Here's that Force India and Williams sandwich on board with Esteban Ocon here in replay into turn 2. Massa on the right. Contact there between Ocon and Massa, which then pushes Ocon into the Renault of Nico Hülkenberg, I believe it was. There was some damage to the front wing of Esteban Ocon. I could not really see if there was any damage to any of the other cars involved. No one the worse for wear, though. Ocon has since made a pit stop. Meanwhile, at the sharp end, Max Verstappen, fastest lap of the race, a 136.867. That is about 0.4 faster than Lewis Hamilton on that same lap. He did a 137.486. The gap now at the front is 1.097. Hamilton is out of DRS range of Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, we continue to watch the McLaren pace. Stoffel Van Dorn is in an honest P5 at the moment. Fernando Alonso still holding P10. He's holding off Sebastian Vettel. Meanwhile, the debutant Pierre Gasly in P15. Not a bad performance there by the young Frenchman. He's holding up another young Frenchman, Romain Grosjean. I use the word young rather liberally here. So far, only one car out of the race. That was Kimi Räikkönen. He didn't even take the start. Waiting to confirm this as timing and scoring shakes out, but it appears that Max Verstappen is 0.8 faster than Lewis Hamilton per lap. 0.8 of a second per lap is the difference in pace between Verstappen and Hamilton. The gap is now 2.1 seconds. Running through the field here on timing and scoring, looking for any sort of Easter eggs going on here. So far, everything appears to be status quo for everybody other than Lewis Hamilton. It will be interesting to watch the pace of Stoffel Van Dorn relative to the guys around him, namely the Force Indias. if that McLaren is going to have any semblance of reliability, and I definitely use that with a lot of caution, considering that Malaysia is usually the hottest race of the year when we talk about a real feel standpoint, when you factor in the humidity, the dew point, and ambient temperature. It's not as hot as Bahrain, but this is a tough place for engines, for overall driveline components, because it is so hot and it is so humid here. If Honda are going to have reliability issues, it's going to be here, but we'll see. We will absolutely see. Honda have done an absolutely terrible job all year, but if they do manage to survive the race distance, that would be something extraordinary indeed. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen at the sharp end of the field resets fastest lap yet again, 136.863. Hamilton sets a personal best on the previous lap, 137.202. Yeah, Cameron, I have to reluctantly agree with you here, because after this race, I don't think I'm going to go back to sleep, unlike what happens at 8 a.m., because at 8 a.m. I'll go to bed at a normal time, and then all of a sudden, you know, the race is on at 7:30 or whatever, so I'll wake up at 7, and then it's a Sunday morning, and then, well, the day is kind of started already, so you're kind of lethargic for the rest of the day. This one, though, I got maybe 3 hours of sleep, but we'll be over here at around 5 a.m. Does it really pay to go back to sleep for an hour or two? Not really, so I'll get an early start to the day today. Yes, not having to wake up at 5 a.m., that is always a glorious thing, particularly on the weekend. In replay here, watching Stoffel Van Dorn and Sergio Perez. Not entirely sure why we're watching a replay here. Nothing really dramatic happens. Perez goes for a move on Stoffel Van Dorn, and he got that move done. Van Dorn now down into P6. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen at the sharp end of the field resets fastest lap yet again. 136.661. That is almost half a second lap quicker than Lewis Hamilton. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton now 2.6 seconds. Daniel Ricciardo is absolutely nowhere relative to those two. However, he is having a titanic scrap with Valtteri Bottas for P3. Bottas wants it. Ricciardo has it for now. Watching Ricciardo and Bottas here on the screens, the Mercedes has to drop back through the high-speed corners as we have expected from these 2017 cars. They are particularly aero-sensitive. However, down the straights, that Mercedes does appear to be quicker. That does pretty much confirm that Hamilton must have some sort of a problem. Either that's with the hybrid system or it's a straight-up old engine problem for Hamilton's Mercedes, because Bottas is quicker than Ricciardo, which means that the Mercedes is quicker than the Red Bull, at least when it's healthy. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel finally disposes of Fernando Alonso. However, Alonso did not make life easy for the German. Mitchell, I think the answer to your question is they're trying to keep Vettel out of sync with everybody else so they can have more options to adjust their pit-in time. I think we can only expect one pit stop for the majority of the field in this race, so by having Vettel on the more durable tires to start, they can have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of when they're going to come into the pits. They're trying to account for all kinds of things. If there's a possible safety car, if we get the odd rain delay, something like that, which is always possible at a place like Malaysia. They just want more options as they get deeper into the race. They are willing to sacrifice some ultimate speed in order to have a little bit more choice later on. The gap now between Verstappen and Hamilton, 3.6 seconds. Absolutely extraordinary. I was not expecting Hamilton to be so slow today. Verstappen is visually quicker than Hamilton in a straight line. Hamilton is just dropping back all kinds of track position in the straight line here. What is going on with that Mercedes? How bad is that supposed hybrid problem? We've yet to get confirmation of it. Meanwhile, it appears that we are about to lose another car in this race. Nico Hülkenberg has gone back into the pit lane. Kevin Magnussen is in the pit lane as well. That's a normal pit stop for the Dane. Red Bull telling Ricciardo that on the last lap he took 1 second out of Lewis Hamilton. Both Red Bulls now faster than what should be the leading Mercedes. This is not a good day for Lewis Hamilton. He's definitely going to take to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram with the hashtag blessed. Max Verstappen, once again, fastest lap of the race at 136.474. That is almost exactly 1 second faster than Lewis Hamilton on the previous lap. The gap now between those two is 5 seconds exactly. A clarification here, Nico Hülkenberg is still classified as running, however he is in P19 and last. Grosjean and Massa in the pit lane here. 11 laps on their tires, these appear to be scheduled stops. Massa out of the pits. Max Verstappen still setting fastest sector times. He's fastest of all in Sector 2 at 32.077. Compare that to Lewis Hamilton through Sector 2, 32.595. Verstappen a half a second quicker through Sector 2 alone. Apparently, Mercedes telling Hamilton that Sebastian Vettel may be a threat to Hamilton by the end of the race. Vettel, meanwhile, already up to P8 after starting dead last. Max Verstappen sets yet another fastest lap, 136.246. Lewis Hamilton last time by 136.849. The gap is up to 5.6 seconds. Lance Stroll in the pit lane from P8. Pierre Gasly also in the pit lane, making his first ever live-action Formula 1 pit stop. Let's see, how does Gasly do on this first ever F1 pit stop? Perfect, right on the marks. Team don't have to shuffle around. They get the tires off, they put the new tires on. He's away as soon as the green light goes on. Well done. Yes, there is quite a story here brewing in terms of what might have been for Ferrari. Had Vettel and Raikkonen been at the front of the grid as they should have been, right now you've got to factor in that Vettel would be leading and Raikkonen probably could be consolidating second place. That would put Lewis Hamilton down to P3 at best. However, the Red Bulls have been quicker than Mercedes so far, and that appears to be the case right now as well. Verstappen leading Hamilton and Ricciardo leading Bottas. So, 2 Ferraris, 1 and 2, we have to assume, and then potentially 2 Red Bulls, 3 and 4. Hamilton could have been down in P5 relative to a Sebastian Vettel leading the race. What might have been indeed. Out of the pits there, Stoffel Vandoorne fighting off both of the Williams cars. Lance Stroll, meanwhile, in the confusion, manages to overtake Felipe Massa. Car 18 ahead of car 19. That's a sight. Speaking of Williams, who is going to be Lance Stroll's teammate next year? Stroll has his position in the team secure thanks to a lot of daddy money. However, will Felipe Massa want to stay on for 2018? Or will Williams go for some new talent in the form of Robert Kubica? Perhaps Kubica has been connected with the team. I would love to see Kubica make an F1 return, as bleak a prospect as that is at this point. However, it would be really cool to see. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen still leading here. His last lap time, a 136.444. P2, Lewis Hamilton, a 137.192 last time by. The gap is now just about 7 seconds. The purple sector times have mostly gone away here. We are getting into that tire wear phase of the race. When will we see pit stops from the front runners? Gotta be soon, I would imagine. Meanwhile, if anybody's had their eye up here on the sky in Malaysia, the sun has mostly gone away over most of the circuit. The stark shadows are gone, and it is pretty much overcast again here. Could weather be a factor? We're going to find out. Meanwhile, Jos Verstappen looking on from the Red Bull garage. Mitchell, no, I've not seen any onboard footage of Robert Kubica since 2000. When was the last time? Yeah, since 2011. That was the last time that I saw any onboard footage of Robert Kubica. So, no, I have not seen how he actually drives the car now. I would assume it's not that much different from how he used to, but I do understand that he has some mobility concerns in that right arm. But evidently he can still be quick in an F1 car, and that's all that really matters. But it would be interesting to see. Kubica's onboards were always interesting to watch, though, even before his accident, because he employed very intricate finger movements in changing gear with the paddles on the back of the steering wheel as well, with just all of his switch adjustments. He was a very intricate driver. He was very interesting to watch. Danny Ricciardo goes purple in Sector 1 at 24,777. Compare that to Max Verstappen in 24,995 through Sector 1. Meanwhile, lurking down here in P6 is Sebastian Vettel. He's got some clear air in front of him. However, his next target is going to be Sergio Perez in that Force India. I think he's going to catch him before too long, and then perhaps could we see Sebastian Vettel fighting with Valtteri Bottas for P4? It is certainly a possibility. We're only on lap 17 of 56, and Vettel's already up into P6. Absolutely storming drive from the former world champion. Yes, I agree. Seb probably going to try that one stop. We'll see how the tire deg is. So far, it seems to be nominal for everybody. The front runners on the Super Soft, they're still running here with 20 laps on their tires. Sebastian Vettel, of course, with the same number of laps on his tires. And, well, he seems to be just as quick, pretty much, as the front runners. We'll see who blinks first. I have to believe that the Super Softs will wear out before the Softs, but what is that delta? It might not be as much as we think. Pirelli tires this year have proven themselves to be quite resilient. Well, at this point, the Max Verstappen driver of the day meme might actually mean something. He's currently leading the race. He is once again set a purple sector time in Sector 2, 32.066. For comparison's sake, Lewis Hamilton through Sector 2 on this lap, 32.338. The gap between he and Hamilton is 9 seconds. Yes, if we get rain here, all bets are off in terms of a processional affair, as we've kind of had this turn into. However, Max Verstappen is leading, and that is a change for once. The weather appears to be stable, but the clouds continue to move in. I don't know if that means necessarily that rain is coming, but it is most decidedly overcast here in Malaysia. Yes, you really do never know in Malaysia. That is the beauty of being here in this tropical, equatorial sort of climate, because the weather can change literally in the blink of an eye, as we saw in 2009. We talked about this a couple of laps ago, that Sebastian Vettel would be on the heels of Sergio Perez before too long, and indeed, there he is. The gap between these two guys is only 0.4 of a second, and Vettel has DRS advantage over the Force India. Will he be able to leapfrog this for P5? Yes, you've heard that correctly, P5! Sebastian Vettel is going for working lap 20 of this Malaysian Grand Prix. We're not at half distance yet, and Sebastian Vettel has already passed well over half the field. He is working on getting 5th position here. That is a drive and a half from the German. Looking at Perez into turn 1, not quite close enough even with the DRS assist. However, Vettel is coming. Vettel is able to gobble up so much time on that Force India through Sector 2. It's unbelievable, the speed differential between that Ferrari and that Force India. However, the Force India is fast in a straight line, even without that DRS factor. Vettel has DRS, Perez does not, but is it enough for Vettel to leapfrog Perez for P5? We are looking at that right now. Straight line speed differential is there, but Perez is able to build up enough of a gap with that Force India's slipperiness. I'm not entirely sure if it's a Mercedes engine versus a Ferrari engine necessarily, or if that Force India is just better aerodynamically suited to the straight lines. Vettel going for it into turn 1. Does he make it stick? Yes, he does. I believe he goes slightly wide through turn 1, however, not wide enough for Perez to retake the position. Sebastian Vettel now, P5. P5 for Sebastian Vettel after starting P20, 21 laps ago. 20th to 5th in 21 laps. That's a drive for the ages. Meanwhile, at the sharp end, Max Verstappen continues to pull away from Lewis Hamilton. The gap has come down slightly to 8.6 seconds. However, that is still pretty unassailable at this stage of the race. Sebastian Vettel fastest in Sector 1, 24.742. Yes, I can confirm Sebastian Vettel is running in P5 at the moment. His next target is going to be Valtteri Bottas, who is a further 3 seconds up the road. Yes, I agree. I have always thought that Sebastian Vettel cracks under pressure because we've seen him crack under pressure in the past. Whenever he's not been in the lead of the championship from start to finish, well, he hasn't won the championship, the only exception there being 2010. However, well, we've got a championship on the line. Vettel needs to be absolutely perfect today in order to stay alive in the World Championship hunt, and, well, he's being pretty well perfect today so far. He's gone from 20th to 5th in 21 laps, and his next target is Valtteri Bottas, who is now only 2.3 seconds up the road. Vettel's going to be overtaking Bottas here in maybe another 2 or 3 laps. This is not over yet. Yeah, if so, if Seb somehow were to win this race, we're a long way away from that, but you know, at this point it is not completely out of the question. It's 32 seconds between Vettel and Verstappen, P1 to P5. However, well, we've seen stranger things happen, like both Ferraris take each other out at the start of the race in Singapore. So, well, I don't think we can quite discount anything at this point. But if my money were going to be bet in a safe place, which it's not, I would say Max Verstappen should be winning this race. But, again, you never know what could happen, which is why we run the races. Deadpool, hi there. There it is in your picture. You can visually count the gap now between Valtteri Bottas and Sebastian Vettel. It is 1.4 seconds as we come to start-finish. Vettel does not have DRS quite yet. He'll probably have it on this lap coming, however. Vettel is getting ready to dispose of Valtteri Bottas for P4 after starting in P20 24 laps ago. This is extraordinary. Bottas radio. Mercedes telling Bottas, let's try to minimize our losses. Minimum speed through turns 4 and 6. Whatever that means. We're probably dealing with tire wear at this point. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton is now stabilized at around 8.6 seconds. It was up to over 9 seconds previously. We've lost about half a second there. No more purple times being set by the guys in front. Deadpool, you've only missed everything. Lewis Hamilton has some sort of a hybrid gremlin on that Mercedes. He lost P1 to Max Verstappen several laps ago, and he's still sitting there 8.7 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen out of the race with an apparent turbocharger failure before the race even started. Hamilton radio. Hamilton says the tires are giving up. We're going to see pit stops here very shortly, but who blinks first? Is it Verstappen or Hamilton? We have seen in the past that Max Verstappen is good on old tires. In replay, Lewis Hamilton, what do we see here? Lock up on the left front heading into the final corner of the lap. Running ever so slightly wide. It's a pretty low speed lockup, no real damage to that left front tire. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel now hounding Valtteri Bottas for P4. The gap is 0.721. Vettel will have DRS if this remains down the penultimate straight. Vettel was a lot faster than some other guys previously. And we've got a spinner. We have a Force India facing the wrong way around. This is Esteban Ocon. I can't quite see where this is. I think it's in the penultimate corner of the lap. Indeed it is. Ocon has kept the car running and he is resuming. I beg your pardon, that was into turn 1. That was between turns 1 and 2. Now the track map flipped the wrong way around. Let's see what happened with Ocon here. He was fighting with Carlos Sainz. Was there contact, or did Ocon just lose it all on his own? Yes, there was definite contact there between Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon. Rubber-to-rubber contact. Ocon got bounced into the air there. Ocon still carrying some damage from that lap 1 incident with Nico Hülkenberg and Felipe Massa. Vettel is right underneath the gearbox of Valtteri Bottas at the moment. Can Sebastian dispose of the Mercedes? He's going to try. Vettel going for it. Oh, he's got to back out of that. That was a disappearing wedge if ever I saw one. Heading through Sector 2 now. What is that relative pace? Science radio. Sainz putting the blame squarely on Ocon for that Turn 1 incident. He says there's no damage to the car. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel still trying to close up as much as he can on Valtteri Bottas under the brakes. What is this going to be like down the straights? Two very long straights, ending and beginning the lap here in Malaysia. Lewis Hamilton here in the pit lane on lap 27. What does this mean for Verstappen? Hamilton off of the super softs and on to trying to confirm. Yes, he is on the soft, the yellow sidewalled soft tires here. 27 laps there is that delta figure on the super softs. What does this mean for Verstappen and Ricciardo? Daniel Ricciardo inherits P2 from Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas and... Yes, Valtteri Bottas and Sebastian Vettel, they remain behind Lewis Hamilton for the moment. Sebastian Vettel still unable to dispose of Bottas. Yes, a Mercedes engine problem. That's, yeah, few and far between. The last Mercedes engine problem, the last major one that I can remember, of course, was at this race last year. Verstappen in the pits, only one lap difference between Verstappen and Hamilton here. Daniel Ricciardo, meanwhile, inherits the race lead. On to the soft yellow branded sidewall tires here for Max Verstappen. Where does he resume? Verstappen now coming back up to speed, and he comfortably resumes in front of Lewis Hamilton. So Verstappen on aggregate maintains the race lead. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel coming into the pits in the sole remaining Ferrari. Well, we were wondering why Ferrari went onto those soft tires rather than the super softs, and I think we've got our answer. They had some clear track, and they took the opportunity for the pit stop. Vettel now on the super softs, and he should, I caution, should be good to go to the end. Red Bull telling Ricciardo that they're going to extend this first stint a little bit. Evidently, Ricciardo's tires are still okay, even though he is still on the super softs. Yes, that Assetto Corsa car tuner app. I have played with it. Haven't really gotten any interesting results from doing things, but yep, I am aware of it. I do have it. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas into the pits. Waiting to confirm the compound that he has gone to. He is on the soft tires as well, yellow sidewalls. On new tires, Lewis Hamilton, fastest lap of the race, a 134.723. He is still in P3. The gap between he and Verstappen is 5.3 seconds. Ricciardo now pits, extending that stint apparently meant 2 more laps. Verstappen now re-inherits the race lead. Lewis Hamilton P2. Gap is 5.3 seconds. Hamilton fastest of all. Purple in Sector 1, 24.361. We have a Toro Rosso going slowly at the end of the lap, coming into the pit lane. That is Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has entered the pits at a greatly reduced pace. Is this a normal stop, or is this a retirement? We're about to see. No mechanics are ready for Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso on one of the Haas cars, and the camera's cut away from it. We need to see the end result of this. That is Kevin Magnussen and Fernando Alonso fighting through turn 2. Esteban Ocon briefly off and on there out of turn 4. He is fighting with Felipe Massa for P9. Perez dives into the pits. Yeah, guys, don't get me started on Jean Todt, because this will turn into an anti-environmentalist ranting session, but Jean Todt he's basically cancer, Jean Todt. Tracking Daniel Ricciardo here, there appears to be some sort of damage on the floor of his car around the tongue or T-tray section on the underside of that Red Bull, because at speed, as the download starts to work on the car, as downforce increases, as speed increases, a lot of sparks are coming up from underneath the front end of Ricciardo's car, and there is a bit of an asymmetry on the right-hand side of that floor versus the left-hand side of that floor. So we'll watch Daniel Ricciardo closely here. Sebastian Vettel, fastest lap, 134.689. Meanwhile, working lap 32 of 56, I'm pleased to report that both Macondas are still running. Fernando Alonso on Kevin Magnussen. Does he make it stick this time? It's going to be tough. Magnussen forces him out wide. There's a little bit of contact there between the McLaren and the Haas. However, Alonso out-drags Kevin Magnussen out of turn 2. VTEC working well for the Spaniard. Fernando Alonso radio, get the popcorn ready. With regard to Kevin Magnussen, he says, "What an idiot." There was a lot of weaving on the part of Kevin Magnussen. However, personally, I think go ahead and weave. Is it dangerous? Sure, but we're racing. You're not just supposed to give up your position when somebody's within a second of you. Kevin Magnussen, in response to Alonso, saying, "What the hell is he doing, that guy?" Yes, Fernando Alonso, Bahrain 2012, I want to say, when Nico Rosberg forced him off the circuit there. That radio transmission, "All the time you have to live in a space, all the time." So, yeah, that's where that comes from. The Razor Kill, I had no idea you were in Pittsburgh. We have quite a few Americans here. Really cool to see. Race Control officially rules that incident between Alonso and Magnussen as a racing incident. No investigation necessary. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel resetting fastest lap yet again. 1:34.371. He's still in P4. He is 10.7 seconds down the road from Daniel Ricciardo for P3. It is not inconceivable that we could see a Ferrari on the podium this afternoon, morning, whatever. And speak of the devil, and he shall come. The cameras pick up Sebastian Vettel. Absolutely storming drive. Meanwhile, we have Romain Grosjean with a Sauber in tow. This is the fight for the illustrious 17th place. And Sebastian Vettel is coming up to lap these guys. Incredible. He started behind these guys, and now he's coming up to lap them. Unbelievable. Sim604. First of all, congratulations on your 2,000 subs, and it is just past 4 in the morning here on the East Coast of the United States. The lap record here during the race is a 134.223. That is held by Juan Pablo Montoya, set in 2004 in that immensely powerful Williams BMW. However, Sebastian Vettel is knocking on the door of that. Will we see a new lap record in Malaysia this afternoon? So far, the clouds are holding it in. I don't see any real prospect of rain. Daniel Ricciardo really running hard over the curbs here in replay. There is definite damage to the floor of that Red Bull. However, it does not appear to be hampering him significantly. But, yep, the close-up telephoto shots showing that there is a definite asymmetry on the floor of that Red Bull, right versus left. Meanwhile, cameras have also picked up Kimi Räikkönen. He's in his street clothes here, giving very bois-filled interviews. And the Ferrari team has turned Kimi's car into a little bit of a seating area. Kimi Räikkönen saying, yeah, well, it's far from perfect, but it's one of those things that happens in racing. Bois. I would be really curious to see exactly what that problem was on the Ferrari. If it is a turbo issue, what is it? We have a local yellow in Sector 3. Oh, look! Jolyon Palmer facing the wrong way. What else is new? Max Verstappen here. He's behind Magnussen and Palmer on track. He's coming up to lap these guys. Get out of his way. Don't spoil this. Get the hell out of the way, boys. If you're going to have an incident, don't take out Verstappen. Thank you very much. Don't hit him, don't hit him, don't hit him. You're way too close to Verstappen, guys. Let him go. And Palmer and Magnussen get together. Verstappen, He emerges from that unscathed. That was way too close for comfort. Jonathan Palmer looking on, looking just as perplexed as his son always looks. Sebastian Vettel fastest lap 134.311 here in replay. Palmer and Magnussen. Who's at fault here? That's Palmer at fault, 100%. Meanwhile, Verstappen was right there in front of these two guys. I really do not understand why we have Jolyon Palmer in Formula One. He's slow, he doesn't get the results, and whenever he makes a mistake, he blames somebody else immediately. Honestly, just get out. Absolutely get out. Sebastian Vettel, another fastest lap, a 134.218. Unless my numbers deceive me, that is a new race lap record here in Malaysia. Juan Pablo Montoya's 2004 record has fallen. Verstappen coming up to lap Fernando Alonso. Alonso should let him through without much drama. I think Palmer is actually worse than Maldonado, because at least Maldonado, he didn't have the skill, but he did have speed. And when he went for it, and he never apologized for anything. Palmer doesn't have the skill, he doesn't have the speed, and whenever he makes a mistake, he makes an excuse. So that's not a professional, in my opinion. If you're going to commit to a maneuver, commit to it, and then don't apologize for it afterward when it goes wrong. Just say, well, yeah, I screwed up and this happened. It'll go better next time. But Palmer, he finds excuses in places where excuses just don't exist. Racing drivers are expert excuse makers. I'm aware of this, but there is absolutely no excuse for Jolyon Palmer. He has no business being in Formula One whatsoever. Working lap 41 of 56, 1 hour, 6 minutes into this race. The pace here has been really, really quick. We're used to seeing Malaysia as a longer race, but not today. These 2017 cars really showing their speed. Sebastian Vettel goes purple in Sector 2 with a 31.212. He goes purple in Sector 3 with a 38.291, and he caps it all off with a new fastest lap, a 134.080. He's the only car running in the 34s. Yeah, Maldonado's whole sponsorship package was from the Venezuelan state-owned oil company, and, well, one could argue that, well, Venezuela should have been spending money on feeding its people rather than feeding a second-rate F1 talent. However, that was Hugo Chavez, that was that socialist government, and, well, yes. After the death of Hugo Chavez, we also saw the death of Maldonado's Formula One career, by no coincidence there. Maldonado and Chavez, by all accounts, were personal friends, and, well, there's the nepotism that goes with corrupted governments. Sebastian Vettel now coming up to lap Julian Palmer. Please behave yourself, Mr. Useless. Venezuela effectively doesn't exist anymore as an entity. Their government is basically all for show. It's not really functioning. Their current president for life, Nicolás Maduro, is not acting very maturely, as his namesake may suggest. Venezuela, effectively at the moment, is a live-action version of the Grand Theft Auto video game series. I did hear a report about a month ago of people literally stealing police helicopters. Yeah, it is absolute chaos in Venezuela. They are so poor at this point that Venezuelans are crossing into the neighboring countries of Colombia and Brazil trying to buy groceries because the inflation in Venezuela is so amazingly high that it's cheaper and safer for people to illegally cross into other countries just to buy food. It is absolutely unbelievable. Brazil and Colombia also starting to have problems due to the influx of Venezuelans coming in just trying to buy things. Meanwhile, Marcus Ericsson bounding over the curbs very hard. Big shower of sparks coming up from the undertray of that Sauber. Does not appear to be the worse for wear, though. I don't want to say anything here, but there was a radio transmission from Verstappen to Red Bull saying that he was starting to get bad upshifts in that car. I hope that was just maybe the rear tires were spinning up a little bit too quick and breaking traction. Hopefully that was just a blip. Unfortunately, with these hybrid powertrains, it's not really possible to run in a high gear for an entire lap. The hybrid systems just aren't optimized to run at that much of a gearing disadvantage, but, I mean, it is theoretically possible, but he would lose a ton of speed. 11 laps to go. Come on, Red Bull, hold together. Yes, the new IndyCar for 2018. That thing looks really nice. It's a very cool blend of the current spec DW12 as well as some of the aesthetic highlights of the old Champ cars. I'm thinking of the Panos DP07, I believe it was called. The last Champ car spec chassis. That was a really cool looking car, and IndyCar bringing in elements of the old Champ car days. Ten laps to go. Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo separated by just 1.1 seconds. Will we see Ferrari on the podium today? It is possible, guys. Yeah, IndyCar being an entirely spec series, it does detract from the technical intrigue there, but I've got to say, having been to a recent IndyCar race, the one at Pocono this year, it is a really cool thing to see. It absolutely is. The atmosphere at the track was great. The people there were great. The fans were very respectful, very dignified. The IndyCar staff that I came into contact with were absolutely professional. IndyCar is a show, and they know that they've got a good show. They could definitely lend a lot of knowledge to Formula One. Verstappen radio. Red Bull telling Verstappen, use your tools to adjust your balance as you need. Verstappen replies, it's all okay. Encouraging words from the Dutchman. A convective storm forming. In other words, a thunderstorm. I love the technical terminology here. Convection currents. Oh, you mean weather. Yeah. With 9 laps to go, though, is that enough time for this convective storm to start convecting its way across the circuit? We will see. Sebastian Vettel really going for it on Daniel Ricciardo. He's got DRS here. Ricciardo's got a tow from Nico Hülkenberg and Fernando Alonso in front. I don't think Vettel's going to be able to do anything here. Indeed, he does not. Both men try to lap themselves around Fernando Alonso. Ricciardo makes it past the Spaniard. Vettel will be next through. I expect Alonso to jump out of the way. Indeed, Alonso jumps out of the way. Vettel complaining about Fernando Alonso's speed in terms of jumping out of the way. Honestly, I think Alonso did exactly what he needed to do. I mean, typically when it does rain here in Malaysia, the entire contents of the Straits of Malacca are dumped onto the circuit, but 8 laps to go, we're running out of time. It's driver of the day voting time. My vote's going to go to Sebastian Vettel. I don't really think anybody else deserves it, not even Max Verstappen. He's driven an absolutely perfect race, but look at what Vettel has managed to do. He's running in P4 after starting in P20. Vettel going on Ricciardo into turn 1. He thinks better of it. Ricciardo, to his credit, put on a very firm block. Completely entitled to do that, in my opinion. It will be at least one more lap now behind the Red Bull for Sebastian Vettel. Ferrari telling Sebastian, attack now. What do you think he's doing, guys? Meanwhile, if anybody's still thinking about Lewis Hamilton, the gap between he and Verstappen is 7.8 seconds. Yeah, the Razor Kill, that might have been one of the serial dislikers, but he's been banned now. I'm going to try to post obscenities here in my live chat. You're going to get banned. Unfortunately, I have had to put some filters on the comments here because I have had some people just coming in out of nowhere and posting obscenities or just outright racist things, and, well, I don't want that on my channel, so, yeah. If you want to get banned, that's a surefire way to do it. Six laps remaining for Max Verstappen here. I have to keep reminding myself that it's not even 4:30 in the morning yet here where I am, but I am wide awake. This race has actually been a bit more exciting than I thought it was going to be. We have a little bit of an inverted result here at the front of the grid, and that is exactly what F1 needed. It's been too much Mercedes domination this year. 5 laps to go for Max Verstappen. Can Vettel do anything about Daniel Ricciardo? The gap between Ricciardo and Vettel is at 1.6 seconds. It would be really cool if Ferrari could get it together and put together a last charge for the title, but if they managed to do that, I could only then wonder why they weren't doing that for the whole rest of the season, because they had quite an opportunity to dominate this season right from the word go with that win in Australia, and they just didn't back it up with performances. So if they're able to put things together now for the end of the championship, I really would just have to wonder, why now? What happened earlier? Four laps to go for Max Verstappen. The TV cameras finally pick him up again. He is just inch perfect through every corner, through every lap. Also, interesting to watch these cars going through those high-speed corners. You can see the deformation visually in real time of those, particularly the rear tires. You can just see the sidewalls flexing underneath the car as the side load comes on, those lateral Gs through those corners. In qualifying spec, when they've got the engines fully turned up, through some corners this year, these cars are pulling 7, yes, 7G. Incredible grip. Yeah, Michael put up an incredible showing in the second half of 2006. That all started really at the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. I remember that race not because it was particularly exciting, but just the way that Ferrari utterly dominated that race. It was a 1-2 finish, great drive by Michael Schumacher. That's when they really started to bring down Fernando Alonso's lead in the championship in 2006. And Michael really came within a shout of winning that title in 2006. However, an engine failure in Japan basically sealed the deal on that. Speaking of the G-forces, watch Max Verstappen's head here if we stay with him with the camera shots through the high-speed corners. Normally you see the drivers there, they turn their head into the corner toward the apex through the high-speed corners. Now Max Verstappen's just letting his head get pushed around by the G. Definitely not surprised that he's showing signs of fatigue. This is a very physical race in very physical cars. Three laps to go for Max Verstappen. And yes, I suppose it wouldn't be a Ferrariman live stream if we didn't talk a little bit about politics. Lewis Hamilton considering joining the Take a Knee NFL-style protest of the U.S. anthem at the Circuit of the Americas. I have to say that if Hamilton decides to do that, there goes F1's nascent yet growing image in the United States. Everyone has a right to protest, particularly peacefully to protest. However, you must show common respect and common decency, and it's just common decency to stand when a country's national anthem is played. You don't have to put your hand on your heart, you don't have to sing it, but you do have to stand. The razor kill, agreed. Even though I'm not religious, you still show respect to things that are greater than yourself. And that's the same reason why I don't talk during the podium ceremonies here for these live streams. It's just common decency. Kevin Magnussen off and on here in the Haas. No big deal. He'll have dirtied the tire slightly with that excursion. 2 laps to go. Lots of brake dust coming out from the Haas of Romain Grosjean. Remember, all through last year and part of this year as well, Haas with persistent brake issues. Hopefully that car will do another 2 laps. Grosjean and Gasly really going for it. Kudos to Gasly here, his first ever F1 race. He is fighting with veteran Romain Grosjean, albeit for P13, but he's fighting with a veteran driver nonetheless. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has started the final lap. Christian Horner, the feeder twitching there on the pit wall. Come on, Max Verstappen. This will be your 2nd career victory if you can do it. He's just completing Sector 1 now. Verstappen, he's in Sector 3 down the penultimate straight. 1 corner to go for the 20-year-old Dutchman. Hard to believe that this guy is still so young after being in F1 for as long as he already has been. Already a winner, and he does it for the 2nd time in his career. Max Verstappen wins the Malaysian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton comes home in P2. Fernando Alonso, he'll finish in P11. Stoffel Van Dorn finishes in P7. Both McLarens finish the race. Points for Van Dorn. Daniel Ricciardo comes home in 3rd. Sebastian Vettel comes home in 4th. A great drive by the German. Max Verstappen looking suitably elated. Lewis Hamilton pulls alongside, giving his congratulations to Max Verstappen. Love or hate Lewis Hamilton, he does show good sportsmanship most of the time. Sebastian Vettel coming down on the cooldown lap. The rear end is missing from that Ferrari. The rear wing is off, and the left rear wheel is sitting where the rear wing should be. What happened here on the cooldown lap for Sebastian Vettel? We need a replay. There's apparently been a big accident. What has happened here on the cooldown lap? The race is over. Sebastian Vettel trying. We still haven't gotten a replay here. Apparently a Williams was involved. Was it Lance Stroll? Sebastian Vettel climbs out of the stricken Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel is okay. I still cannot confirm who else was involved with this. Pascal Wehrlein stops alongside Sebastian Vettel. Is he going to try and give Vettel a ride back to the pit lane? As Pascal Wehrlein has stopped. Vettel throws his steering wheel into the cockpit of the Sauber and Wehrlein takes off. Sebastian Vettel gets a lift home from his German countryman. Here's the replay. Sebastian Vettel on board with him. Lance Stroll is in the Williams. Yes, there's contact with Lance Stroll. Apparently no major damage to the car of Stroll. However, Vettel's car completely trashed. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has made it to Parc Fermé. I'd assume that he is completely unaware of what has happened behind him. Yeah, that was just sloppy on the part of Sebastian Vettel. He did not have to be that close to Lance Stroll, and he got a little bit too close, evidently. There are going to be fines levied in two places here for this taxi ride. One, probably to Pascal Wehrlein, which I think is complete nonsense. If you want to give somebody a ride on the cooldown lap, by all means, go ahead and do it. But Sebastian Vettel, rather than replacing his steering wheel on his own car, he took the steering wheel with him and he threw it in Pascal Wehrlein's lap. To the regulations, when you abandon the car on circuit at any time during the weekend, you have to affix the steering wheel again. He should keep the finish, considering that the contravening of the regulations occurred after the checkered flag. However, we'll see what the stewards think about this. We'll see if the FIA get involved with this. They're so inconsistent with their penalties. It's really hard to predict what they'll do, if anything. And yes, it is raining in Malaysia. I have yet to do any Halo running. I'm trying to prolong it as much as possible. Meanwhile, Vettel and Verline making their way back to the pits. Trying to remember, I'm thinking this is Sebastian Vettel's first ever taxi ride. In the prep room here, Verstappen looking tired, but still remarkably fresh considering the amount of physical effort he's just exerted for the better part of the last 2 hours. Taki Inui has taken to Twitter. He says, and I quote, "What an idiot tosser. Stroll destroyed the chance of Vettel's chance to win a championship." I don't know if he's trying to translate literally from Japanese or whatever, but that is word for word what Taki Inui has tweeted. What an idiot tosser. Stroll destroyed the chance of Vettel's chance to win a championship. Interesting. That's getting a retweet from yours truly. Lots of Dutch fans here. The fans are now spilling onto the circuit. Great day for the orange people. And I definitely agree, the Halo is going to be the worst thing ever to happen to Formula One. We'll see how next year goes in terms of the action, but right now I'm seeing less and less reason to keep following Formula One to the degree that I do. Man, there is incredible damage to that Ferrari. The entire rear end is gone. The shark fin is all pushed over toward the right-hand side of the car. Interesting to see that it didn't snap off, though, entirely. Apparently that bit of carbon is a bit more flexible than we're giving it credit. And we're coming up to podium time here. Down to Ricciardo in P3, mounts the podium, waiting for Lewis Hamilton for P2. Here he is. And here is your race winner, Max Verstappen, a triumphant second career victory for the Dutchman. Stand by for the Dutch and Austrian national anthems. Yes, quite refreshing to hear some new music on the podium. By new music, I'm not speaking literally. A little bit of a factoid for you. The Dutch national anthem is the oldest bit of music currently used as a national anthem. It was written in the 1500s. The Austrian anthem is a little bit of a historical oddity. Unconfirmed, however, the legend has it that the melody was composed by Wolfgang Mozart. However, the original manuscript of such a work has not survived. There is a cantata written in the last year of Mozart's life, in 1790, that does have a section with a melody that sounds rather similar to the Austrian anthem, however, inconclusive. Trophy presentations well underway. The drivers looking very pleased with their results. And the champagne bottles, they still have GoPros on them. Is the GoPro Hero Session model on those champagne bottles. They all cost $5,000 a piece, in case you're wondering. Podium interview time. Mark Webber with the interviews. Max Verstappen sounding tired but content with the day's performance. Also, a little bit of a programming note for you. In just about 10 minutes' time, we're going to see the release of my F2004 Kunos review. So the Kunos version of the F2004, I did a review yesterday. It is up, it is already in HD, and it's going to be released in 9 minutes' time for all of you guys, so we can all enjoy that. Wanted to release that right after the end of the race. Initially it was going to go for 5:30. However, well, race is over, and it's just coming up on 5 a.m. here on the East Coast, so that's going to be out for you in 9 minutes. I still wouldn't write off Fernando Alonso's chance of switching over to IndyCar. I think it all hinges on how good that Renault engine is in the McLaren next year. If they don't have a good showing in the first few races, I think you might see Fernando Alonso just outright quit Formula One and make the switch over to IndyCar. I know IndyCar would love to have him. Lewis Hamilton spoiling that interview there, spraying Max and Mark with some champagne. Yes, Fernando Alonso did put on one hell of a show at Indy. He led the race for quite a while, and then, well, VTEC kicked in there too. No, the shoey did not happen. Ricardo said a few races ago, I believe at Azerbaijan, that he was going to basically put an end to the shoey, and, well, it apparently has happened. It was cool while it lasted, but I agree with him, it was starting to get a little repetitive. Let's see, having a look at the crowd here on the start-finish straight. The strangest flag that I have seen there, held by a fan, the flag of Uzbekistan. Interesting. There's that replay of Vettel getting into Stroll. It is officially under investigation. Seeing a replay here from another car of that incident between Stroll and Vettel. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure where the blame belongs. Yes, Vettel, evidently, from Vettel's point of view, he closed down on Stroll, but at the same point, you can see Stroll is moving up the racetrack. You've got two cars going into the same space at the same time, and that never works. Oh no, don't get me started on Earth Dreams Honda. Ugh. Alright, for those of you who might be newer to Formula One, in 2007, Honda, it was a factory Honda racing team back then. They were built out of the ashes of BAR, the British American Racing. They had Honda engines for a while, but in 2007, Honda debuted a livery which had no sponsorship on it, and instead it was a picture of the Earth on the car. And Honda put up all of the money for that sponsorship that year, their Earth Dreams program, which still exists to some extent today. They were some of the worst cars we have ever seen. They were basically nowhere near the points on most occasions. The drivers, of course, were Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello, two pretty good drivers. Absolutely terrible package. It only got worse in 2008. They still had that Earth Dreams livery. However, the big picture of the Earth was gone and was replaced by a white and green Earth Dreams livery. To its credit, the car caught fire more times than it ever finished in the points, and it just became a joke. At the end of 2008, Honda pulled out of Formula One. They had a very highly developed 2009 package. Ross Brawn personally came in and mopped up what was left of that team. He bought it, he put his own name on it, and then they went on to win the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. So that's why Honda is such a joke in Formula One. It's not only due to their more recent performances with McLaren, it's due to their own illustrious history, which is not very illustrious. All of Honda's investment in Formula One in the last decade or so, the only thing that they have to show for it is one race victory at Hungary in 2006 for Jenson Button. Yes, honestly, Honda should have left their legacy right where it is. The 80s and early 90s were really good for them when they were partnered up with McLaren for the first time. Ayrton Senna took all of his championships with Honda power, and, well, that's a pretty good legacy for Honda. They should have just left it right where it was. When they came back into F1, they actually didn't do such a bad job. The end of the 90s and early 2000s, powering the BAR cars. 2004 and 2005, their best seasons as an engine supplier for BAR. After that, well, as a factory outfit, they were less than illustrious. In fact, they were absolutely pitiful. And then this latest marriage with McLaren, we all know what the end result of all of that is. So Honda, when they were producing V6 turbos at the end of the 80s, they were good. And then producing those V10 and V12 engines for McLaren in the early 90s, really awesome performances there. But again, leave things where they are in the past. They've sullied that image by coming back with such poor reliability. Yeah, 1991 with McLaren, the MP46 with that Honda V12. The reliability was alright. The performance was not as good as the Renault RS3 and RS4 V10s, but Williams had problems with that active suspension system and the semi-automatic gearbox in 1991. They were running a passive car for the most part in 91. They debuted the active suspension toward the end of the year. The Australian Grand Prix at Adelaide was where they started to trial that active suspension in race conditions. However, reliability, that's where it was at, and that's what enabled McLaren with their inferior car aerodynamically as well as technically, still running a manual gearbox in that era. That's what enabled them to take the Constructors' Championship, and of course Ayrton Senna took his final Drivers' Championship in 1991 with that Honda power. Everything came good for Williams starting in 1992. They took care of the teething problems with that semi-automatic gearbox, and the active suspension really brought that FW14B on song, and it took the Constructors' Championship for Williams in 92. As far as the review video, well, the first clip there, the slow-mo shot, it's just there for looks. Good night. Thanks for joining us. It is 5 a.m. here on the East Coast, so enjoy your extra 2 hours. Yes, Cameron, I agree. Decent race. I was not expecting a decent race here. Malaysia typically is a bore fest, but 2017 has been pretty good for racing. Everybody's still complaining, well, they can't follow closely nose to tail, they can't overtake. Well, I think we saw plenty of overtaking today, and moreover, we saw 2 great drives by Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel. Yep, so far the racing has been pretty good this year. We've had a couple of relatively boring races, however, all in all, pretty good. Even tracks that are stereotypically boring, like Azerbaijan, they gave us a good show. Yes, ASR's B191, they've done a good job with it. It's 0.1 beta, so I mean, for 0.1, as primordial as that is, good effort by ASR so far. They need to give us shifting animations. There's no shifting animation yet. And, yeah, the sounds, yeah, they could work on them a little bit. I mean, it's effectively got the same engine as the Jordan 191 that VRC gave us a while ago. So, yeah, they could work on those sounds a little bit. I think VRC did a really good job with the sounds on their 191. So perhaps ASR could take a little bit of pointers from them. But car drives nice, sounds nice, looks nice, feels nice. Pretty good, considering it's 0.1. Yes, I agree there with the sounds with ASR. I don't know why, but they can't get shifting sounds right. And in most of their cars now, there's no shift sound whatsoever. You just hear the engine change revs. There's no sound from the gearbox. You don't really hear the throttle cut or anything like that. So I do have to wonder. I think they have done some restructuring in terms of their team structure. I've got to wonder who their sound guy is now, because the old sounds in many cases, as you say, were better. Yes, the F310 version 1.0 was also released yesterday. I have driven that briefly, and the sounds are the same as the old WCP F1 1999 mod for R Factor 1. The sounds are exactly the same. They've lifted those sounds directly from the Ferrari on that mod. Well, according to ASR, it is finished. It's 1.0, but I agree, it still does need some work. ASR have run into some problems recently too, with people stealing their mods, as well as marketing the betas for free, and not marketing them, distributing them without permission for free. ASR do ask a donation if you do want one of the beta spec cars, but people have been downloading them and then putting them up on other websites. ASR have removed all of their content from Race Department. They were previously releasing their completed mods on Race Department. That's now gone. They're basically only active on Facebook, as well as on the Driving Italia forum, the Italian forum. So, well, I don't know what's going on with ASR, but they don't seem to be as strong as they have been in previous years. And Cameron, yes, I agree. 2017 is a great year for sim racing. We've got two fantastic F1 cars now native in Assetto Corsa with the SF70H and the F2004. The detail is unparalleled. Yes, Fonseca with his sound packs. He is the master of sound in Assetto Corsa. His sounds on the FXXK were just to die for. I mean, I got that sound pack immediately and swapped over the sounds from the default FXXK sounds. They're just so much more immersive. They're unbelievable. It is quarter past the hour now here in New Jersey. It is 5:15 in the morning. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep before we went live here for the Grand Prix. I'm very glad that I live streamed this one as well because it was a great race, and well, we've got Max Verstappen winning it. It was a really cool race for the last time here in Malaysia. We don't know if Malaysia is really off the calendar. As far as I'm aware, Liberty are continuing their negotiations with the Malaysian government in terms of the race promotion, but for the moment, it is the last Malaysian Grand Prix that we will see for at least a little while. We have got here the race result. P1 for Max Verstappen, his second career victory and the second victory for Red Bull in 2017. P2 for Lewis Hamilton, salvaging what he could of the day with some hybrid problems, we are led to believe. P3 for Daniel Ricciardo, rounding out the podium. Sebastian Vettel in P4 after starting 20th and last. Great drive from the German, the only Ferrari to see the start, let alone the end of the race. He gets my driver of the day. P5 for Valtteri Bottas in the second Mercedes. P6 for Sergio Perez in the Force India, and he's the last car finishing on the lead lap. One lap down now. P7 Stoffel Van Dorn in the Mick Honda. VTEC actually working today. P8 for Lance Stroll. P9 Felipe Massa. P10 and the final point scored by Esteban Ocon. P11 for Fernando Alonso, also seeing the checkered flag in the Mick Honda. P12 for Kevin Magnussen. P13 for Romain Grosjean. P14, the debutant Pierre Gasly. Nice drive by the Frenchman. P15, Julian Palmer. Not a good drive there. P16, Nico Hülkenberg. P17 for Pascal Wehrlein. And P18, final car classified 2 laps down for Marcus Ericsson. Not classified, and DNF for Carlos Sainz, and a DNS did not start for Kimi Räikkönen. Turbocharger problems on the reconnaissance laps thwarted the Finns' efforts today. However, with that, I am going to call it a night or day or morning or whatever you want to call it here. It is insanely early here on the East Coast of the United States. Do enjoy the F2004 review. It has gone live 15 minutes ago. Hope y'all like it. I like this one. Anyway, thank you all very, very much for joining me on this early American morning, and good day to you wherever you happen to be around the world. Ferrariman601 saying thanks, and we will see you soon.